How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, what the video is going to be which deck is better, Ryzeal or Maliss? And this has been the huge question because a lot of people don't really know what the decks are going to look like, what the end boards even look like right now. The Ryzeal end board is pretty standard. The deck is pretty cookie cutter, but Maliss is the deck that's really been the big oddball lately. And this is because I think that we're going to see a repeat of Pod format where Ryzeal ends up being the first choice, like the best deck, and then Maliss eventually just becomes the better deck. And I think that's just because the deck has a lot more opportunities to really be able to combo out, have different engines played, have more opportunities to do different things, different kinds of combos, whereas Ryzeal is pretty limited as to what it can do. It can do quite a bit, but also nothing all at once, because there's a lot of outs for both of these decks. Lancia for Maliss is brutal, but so is D-Barrier for Ryzeal. So it's unfortunate. And then you can also like Ghost Ogre, the Duo Drive. You can hit the deck with Nibiru if they're on the Star Leech combo, which I think is the worst combo because Nibiru should be bad against the deck. But if people are doing that, then everyone's just going to be playing Nibiru. And that's really unfortunate. I hope that you have your 33% chance of drawing that cross out before I have the 33% chance of drawing my Nibiru, right? So definitely something to keep in mind where you're adding in more different ideas and combos. That's why I really like the 4-mode skipper combo, because you're able to just invalidate many hand traps, so being able to check for them by building such a big board that your opponent has to interact with you before you Ryzeal combo. But I do foresee that the deck will end up either just being a super mid-range deck where you're just making rank 4s, or it's going to end up being like a crazier, like mid-rangey-ish combo deck where you're doing a mini combo before you go in for your actual engine to go ahead and try to bait out those hand traps that can be very annoying. Another thing that I want to point out is that I talked about this really important point here with my teammate Ricardo, shoutouts to him, where this definitely feels like a Rise Heart with Forbidden Lance all over again, because Ultimate Slayer is becoming one of the most popular side cards, which it's not on my side yet, but my side's not solidified. It's probably going to be in place of the Duster and the Lightning Storms. But I do think that you should be on Ultimate Slayer right now. But if that becomes the common consensus, definitely see that we're probably going to be changing out the Cosmics for something like Forbidden Lance if the Ultimate Slayer becomes a lot more popular. And again, this is something that we did back in Cash format with the Rise Heart. If our opponent opened up the out for the Rise Heart, we're just like, here's a Lance. So it's unfortunate, and that's something that we might have to run into again with the Detonator. So keep that in mind moving forward, that if people do end up switching to Lance, then Ultimate Slayer becomes cut from our side decks again, because it just becomes a less of a very good card. This is a very consistent deck. You don't have 7th Tachyon until next March. It got pushed back, which is really unfortunate. But you kind of have to find your own way to play the deck as well. I'm playing it with the Armored Xyz cards. I think they're really solid. Having the ability to pitch the trap, then turn this into a Thousand Eyes Restrict is really nice. And then you also have this Engrave where you can banish it at any time. So if your opponent's battling into you and they knock out one of your Xyz monsters, you can turn the other one into a Zeus on your opponent's turn, which is pretty crazy. And it's just another really nice level of interruption. So keep that in mind. The one thing that I'm really displeased with this deck in particular is that the follow-up game plan is pretty bad. You really have to be able to make sure that you keep something in hand that just allows you to keep playing. And that could just be Ice. This card is just the one that says on normal special from deck. It's a very good card. It reminds me of Taya. So that's something just to keep in mind. But the deck itself plays a lot of non-engine. You have a lot of room for it. I also play Desires. I played this back in Striker, back when I would banish 2 Ray, Hornet Drone, and a Rose. As long as I still have 1 Ray, I'm still playing the game, so it's fine. And most games are over by turn 3 anyway. So that's one thing where I think this is really important, especially when you're playing so many hand traps and non-engine, that you can just use this at the end of your combo, draw into your floodgates, your hand traps, or if you just need engine right away, then you can just get to it right away. If Snake does become less popular, I could see Valor rotating out of the format. I am not a huge fan of Valor right now going into Maliss or Ryzeal. It just depends on how the format goes. But there's just too many extenders in this deck. And like, yes, this can hit like the Duo Drive, but I'd almost rather just see an Ultimate Slayer in my hand, because at that point I'm going Ultimate Slayer, bounce the Detonator, and then mirror your logic, turn off the field spell, right? So that's one thing where even if you have Twins of the Eclipse, I don't care, right? And that's all going to change if a lot of people are changing their siding patterns, again, with things like Lance, or if they're just maining Lance. We already saw in the OCG a lot of people are main decking Ultimate Slayer, so it's something to really keep in mind. But I do think that cards like Valor are going to be less good. Cards like Lancia and Ghost Ogre are going to be very prime. And even Nibiru, if people are starting to go like the route of the Starliege. If we do start seeing the duo drives and the detonators more than the Starliege, then I'll probably try to swap Valor out for a different kind of attack card. But if we're starting to see more of the Starliege, then I might be more inclined to put in Nibiru, because again, your board isn't going to be that massive. Nibiruing your own board, if your opponent's able to play through some of it, is still really optimal, and it's going to be able to do a lot of damage into your opponent's card pool, and then you're able to have your crackback with your ice as well, which is really solid. So let's go ahead and talk about the deck that I think is going to end up being better, and that's going to be Maliss. Now, this is my personal list, and there's a lot to break down here. So the number one thing that I want to say is that a lot of people are making this deck out to be just a very standard linear deck, when it's really not, and there's a lot of opportunities to combo and do some really intricate lines and really just have your own kind of fun with the deck, which I think is really dope, because there's a lot of really nice lines that you can go for. I'm also playing things like Terratop with the Cherubini and the Haggard. If you're unfamiliar with the line, you go Terratop plus the Takum Tomborg into Cherubini, dump Dormouse, normal summon literally anything, could be any hand trap in your hand, go into Haggard, banish the Dormouse effect, bring itself back, banish White Rabbit, bring back White Rabbit, set trap, and then go into like your Decoder, into your Heat Soul if you have the extra body, or you can just use both to go into like the Splash Mage to get into like a Heat Soul line, or you can go into like your White Binder, set a trap, and then you go trap effect, bring back White Binder, draw a card. Like, you're just drawing so many cards in this deck, which is really crazy. So it's one of the best Heat Soul decks I've seen in like a really long time. But even past that, you can do way more. I've been ending on like double non-targeting banish plus the bring back of the White Binder with the Bishul in hand, and then able to banish 3 cards out of the graveyard. Just multiple interruptions, which I think is really solid. A lot of people are also saying that you need a main deck max amount of monsters. I think that's completely wrong. I'm playing 3 White Rabbit, 3 Dormouse, and 1 Cheshire Cat. This is the worst one. It sucks. It's also not like a lure you have to banish first. I do not like this card at all. I'm playing one of it as just another name, another body. But at the same point, you have Dormouse and White Rabbit, which are both starters, where this one just isn't. I'm also playing a lot more Bishuls right now. I think these cards are key. If you're on your opponent's turn and you have like a White Binder engrave, or if you have like your Cryptor engrave, you want to make sure you can always get back to them. So you want to make sure that if you're on your opponent's turn, you just Bishul them, and then all of a sudden you're back in business. You're able to make the effects really live and start doing a lot of crazy plays, which I think is really, really good. The other thing too is I'm playing the Foolish Burial, which I think is really important as well, because you turn a Foolish Burial plus a Terratop into like a Haggard, banish a Dormouse, and go off. Or if you have like Bishop plus Foolish is really solid too. So it's just another pseudo way off of like a Sark or a field spell to be able to get into your engine and play the game via like this plus this, right? So I think Foolish is really solid too. Lancia is this deck's absolute kryptonite. It's really rough, and I'm still trying to find lines through this. Having a lot of hand traps in the deck does help out a lot, but it's still really painful to get hit by something like Lancia. So keep that in mind, where you might want to play something like Crossout and Call By, because this card's literally game ending. And if people are actually playing the Small World in Ryzeal right now instead of the 7th Tachyon, because it's not out till March, then they are just going through Small World to get to Lancia, which is so unfortunate. So definitely keep that in mind moving forward, where that's going to be a really big problem as well. I do really like Access Code in this deck too, because the extra bodies are huge. The field spell also reads that your Link monsters also gain 3,000 attack while you have all 3 traps banished. It's come up for me a couple times where I just straight up banish all 3, and then I'll go into like Access Code. But Access Code's also really solid in this deck, because if you have the Links in your graveyard and you Access Code pop something and bring back the Link monster, that's fire. And it's a lot of fun. I do think this deck is going to be really good moving forward. It's a ton of fun. I hope that you enjoyed it too. It's going to be something that will probably end up being some money for sure, just because that's how the game is right now. But I hope this helped you. If you have any questions, let me know down below in the comment section. And I hope that you all have a wonderful night. I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.